Hello, and thank you for joining us. This is No Soundbites Allowed, and I am your host, Michael Voss, the political dragon here in our Bronx offices, speaking to you on November 29th. It's about 5:30 p.m., and it's the holiday season. We are officially in the Christmas season. We just had Black Friday. Everyone's getting ready for Christmas or Hanukkah. There is no such thing as Kwanzaa. And as we do so, one of the traditions every year at this time is you will start to see top 10 lists. And there will be many of them. They'll be about entertainment and finance and politics. It'll be about everything and almost everything under the sun. But there will be one thing that will not make the list, and we're going to talk about it with you today. Before we do that, though, we do want to take a moment to say, if this is the first time that you're seeing our channel, welcome and thank you for joining us. We want you to know we do long-form political commentary. And every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we do a live stream with you talking about all the issues that matter across the world. We look forward to hearing your voice every Sunday because we believe in the First Amendment. We believe in your right to free speech, especially about politics, even as your government may not agree, even as internet giants try to restrict your freedom. We wish to celebrate that, and we hope you will join us every Sunday at 2:30 p.m. to do just that. So with that said, let's talk about 2023. Let's talk about the state of the world and what's going to be happening next. Now, again, you're going to see top 10 lists for everything. And there'll be people who will be picking out the marbles and say, oh my God, top 10 worst movie, and that'll be on the top of the list. Or maybe people will pick She-Hulk on top 10 cancellations in 2023. The Marvels will not be coming back, although Ms. Marvel will be coming back. A lot of people will be looking at that entertainment news and all their top 10 lists. Obviously, we doubt that Doctor Who will be on that list. Of course, for some, the top 10 list will include finances, like top 10 inflation. It now costs over $11,000 under the Biden-Harris administration, under Bidenomics. You need $11,000 more just to keep at the same level that you were in the past. That's Bidenomics, that's inflation, and that's what's on the 2024 presidential election ticket. For other people like New York Mayor Eric Adams, the practical progressive, you're going to hear him talking about immigration and illegal immigration, to be very specific. You're going to hear people talking about 2023 being an all-time high, with some 8 million illegal aliens entering the United States, breaking our infrastructure, harming cities like New York, states like New York, California, Illinois. We're going to see a lot of people put that in their top 10 list for 2023. The number of cities broken by illegal immigration. For some, they'll even go to the subset of illegal immigration, focusing specifically on the number of known and suspected terrorists that have entered the United States. Looking at the southern border, we're looking at 169 known or suspected terrorists that we are aware of that were caught entering the United States under the Biden-Harris administration, a massive increase versus the 2 in 2020. Of course, as ABC would like to inform us, and most of the major news media have ignored and put on a back burner, the actual number of known or suspected terrorists that have entered the United States in 2023 alone actually is 763. It's huge. And it is a massive increase versus 2020. Even 2019, we've seen a 50% increase in the known or suspected terrorists entering the United States. Obviously, this should be on a top 10 list. But you know what won't be on a top 10 list? You know what will be ignored by the mainstream news media and many of the social media giants? What will be suppressed and pushed to the side? The number of Americans that have been abandoned under the Biden-Harris administration. In 2021, Joe Biden abandoned 5,000 Americans. 5,000, as he promised you, told you There were only 100 Americans being left behind. In 2022, Joe Biden exceeded his prior record and broke with 10,000 Americans that he abandoned in the Ukraine. And that's huge. Doubled the number of Americans abandoned. And by the way, never got back to those people in Afghanistan. He simply stopped talking about them, making the grand total under the Biden-Harris administration 15,000 Americans thrown away in war-torn locales around the world. But the Biden-Harris administration wasn't done. In 2023, to outdo what he did in 2021, what happened in 2022, in 2023, Joe Biden abandoned 15,000 Americans. He took the embassy, got them out, ran away, and left 15,000 Americans to have to try and figure out how to survive as warlords inspired by ISIS and Al-Qaeda, released from 2021 to try and deal with that and get back home. By the way, the news media still doesn't want to talk about this story. They stopped talking about this on May 3rd of 2023. The Americans didn't come home. They weren't saved. No. Joe Biden, in 1 year, matched the entire total previously under his administration, and now had a total of over 30,000 Americans that have been abandoned and left for dead. To give this some kind of perspective for the average American, in World War II, during the height of the Pacific War, there were 27,000 Americans who were taken as POWs and or MIA. 27,000. That's less than the number of Americans abandoned by the Biden-Harris administration in just 3 years. Again, to give it more context, according to the Department of Defense, Joe Biden has abandoned more Americans than in every single conflict since World War II combined. That's stunning. And all of that doesn't count what's currently happening in Israel and Hamas. Guaranteed to hit the top news stories of 2023, the discussion of the Hamas-Israel war. In the middle of October, news media had reported that some 250 individuals from around the world had been taken hostage by Hamas. That's separate of the, at the time, 1,600 that were believed to have been killed by Hamas, civilians killed by Hamas, including at the time approximately 33 Americans. Some 20, possibly 22 Americans have been taken prisoner. It didn't take long before we confirmed that there were 33 dead and at least 13 Americans that were believed to have been taken as hostages, human shields for Hamas. And we were still trying to figure out who they were, how many there could be. The number of Americans that were taken prisoner and human shield by Hamas that were being tortured, that number dropped. Those Americans weren't added to the number dead, but they weren't found either, which is incredibly suspicious, but falls in line with what we saw happen to Americans in Afghanistan, what happened to the Americans in Ukraine, the Americans in the Sudan. They just stopped counting, at least by the Biden administration and the mainstream news media, and they fell off of every list except ours. As of today, and as we are doing this video with you, search the term American hostages released by Hamas. How many people have we been able to recover out of the 22, the 13, the 9? The number keeps going down, but Americans aren't coming home. And the answer that we have, even as we refresh the list, remains at least 13 Americans, with a child that was returned home. One child, 2 Americans prior to that, 3 in total, making the total at least 16 that we know of, out of a potential 22 we started with. Where are the Americans? This, we believe, is the biggest item of news in 2023, and it will not be in any of the major lists of 2023. You will look at the news media and they will highlight the war. They will highlight the inflation. They will highlight immigration. They will point to Ms. Marvel and Disney and every other item in the news. But they won't tell you how many Americans have been abandoned. In 2023 alone, that should make a difference, both not just in the 2024 election, but just for every single American, that you cannot trust the Biden-Harris administration to protect you, to save you, to defend you. They're not going to do it. We've seen the results. Year after year after year. In fact, it seems like the Biden-Harris administration is trying to break the record they make every single year. And our enemies around the world are paying attention. They are seeing that sign of weakness. What will 2024 bring us? We expect, if recent history is correct, that there will be even more Americans that will be abandoned by the Biden-Harris administration in some war zone, in some conflict, somewhere in the world. Sadly, that number may well exceed the 15,000 in 2023. It may exceed the 30,000 so far accumulated under the Biden-Harris administration. And if it does that, we may even exceed the number of POWs and MIAs from World War II. We believe this is the number one top 10 item under the entire Biden-Harris administration, regardless of the year. We wish we had better news going into 2024, but rather than trying to appease you, rather than trying to hide the truth, we tell you the facts as they exist. This is irrefutable, factual, empirical data. Now the only question is, since you've become aware, what will you do? Obey and believe. Hell no! I'm happy to be here with you today. Understand the logic, and we see this in social media on a regular basis, and it's something that Newsweek decided not to tell you about. Representative Sheila Jackson Lee has no idea what she's talking about.
You can meet a very, very stringent accuracy rate when it's important, when it matters, like in federal elections.